Shields up, Ironbreakers, and welcome back to Monster Hunter Wilds. In today's video, I'm going to be bringing you a crash course on how to play the Lance based on my experience with it so far in the Monster Hunter Wilds beta. Once the final version of the game releases, I'm going to be making a more comprehensive guide for this weapon, so if you want to stay tuned for that, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, and all that good stuff. But for now, this should be enough to get you started with this weapon. So, what is the Lance all about? And this is a weapon that thrives on simplicity. And I absolutely love how simple it is because it allows you to basically destroy monsters with great efficiency by being able to dismantle them systematically. And I know that that's just like a big word salad, but that's kind of the way that I feel when I'm playing the Lance. You're kind of like a surgeon. You're like, oh, I want to hit him in the head, so I'm going to just like focus on that head, poke, poke, poke. And then you're just like, oh, now I'm going to hit him in his little tippy toes, poke, poke, poke. And that's kind of like the vibe that you get with the Lance. And I personally really like it. But what you see with this weapon is pretty much what you get. So starting things off with our basic attacks, if you press triangle or Y, you're going to get a 3-piece combo, which, you know, it's something that we've had in previous Monster Hunter games before this one. However, for Monster Hunter Wilds, Capcom has done the absolute unthinkable. They've added a 4th poke into the Lance combo. I know. Sounds like a joke, but I'll tell you right now that most Lance veterans are super excited about this change. I promise you. So if we go 1, 2, 3, and one more, and it does a triple poke at the end, which is pretty friggin' good. Now, the other poke that you have is the high poke, which, as you can see, it aims a little bit higher. Now, the thing is, the high poke also deals more damage. So unless you're targeting a very specific part of the monster, like you want to damage the feet of the monster or something like that, usually you're going to be using high poke, assuming that you are close enough and the monster isn't like too small for you to actually hit with the high poke, because again, deals more damage. High poke also goes for 3 pokes, but it has a 4th one that's got like this little quirky animation. And that particular 4th poke in the high poke category, which is circle or B button, actually is a chargeable attack. So if you go 1, 2, 3, charge, it actually charges twice, and then you get this big thrust that deals additional damage, which is cool. But that's not the coolest thing about it, because see, the name of that particular attack is counter thrust. And the reason it's called counter thrust is because it allows you to counter an attack. So say, for instance, you're fighting a monster and you're going like 1, 2, 3, and then you do this and the monster's about to come at you. You are going to attack and hit the monster during his attack, and that is going to cause you to do a counter, and it deals bonus damage. So you can either just charge the final hit of that poke and still just deal additional damage, or you can just, you know, actually counter a monster attack. But usually you can interchange these pokes, so you can go like 1 low, 1 high, 1 low, and then another 1 high, and it's going to go into the counter poke. The maximum still is going to be 4 pokes. Or you can do it the other way around. If you don't want to commit to a charging animation, you can go 1, 2, 3, and then hit the low poke, and you get the triple poke, which is really, really good as well. So the idea that I usually go for is I use the high pokes as much as I can, like I said, because they deal more damage unless I'm specifically targeting a monster part that I want to break, like say a leg or something. But nowadays you also have focus strikes to focus on those things. So usually I just go high pokes as much as I can, right? 1, 2, 3, and then I'll finish with the medium poke, which is the triple stab, right? Unless I see that the monster's actually coming up with an attack, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then I'll charge the counter, and I'll try to get him with his attack and counter the move and actually deal additional damage. It's pretty cool. Now, the Lance boasts one of the best blocking abilities in the game with your right trigger. So you pull it up, and as you can see, there's the special effect there because you can do perfect guards. But basically, this block is real good. And if you happen to land a perfect guard, you're going to be able to counter it. And the moves that you get by countering are almost kind of like the same that you get if you do power guard, which the way that you do power guard is you hold down on your right trigger, or R2, then you press circle or B, and your character is going to go into this power guard animation, right? Power guard means that you are able to absorb attacks way better. This doesn't mean that you're going to be able to block just about everything, even though I'm pretty sure you can block everything in the demo. The thing that scares me the most is the big lightning from Raidao, and you're able to guard that with gun lance. So I don't imagine that you wouldn't be able to guard that with gun lance, even with regular lance, even without power guard. But power guard has a couple of other uses, which is When you block with Power Guard, the more hits they deal on you, the more damage you're going to do when you come out of it with your follow-up attack, because Power Guard has a couple of follow-up attacks that you can do. So if you now press circle, your character does this. And if somebody hits you while you are in Power Guard, that's going to start charging up the power of that specific move, which is pretty good. So if you happen to find a monster that does a bunch of attacks all in one go, and you're able to just block all those with Power Guard, and then you can counter with this, it's going to be pretty friggin' beast. There are other moves that you can exit out of Power Guard with, so if you press triangle and circle, you're going to be doing a running attack, which you can then press another button to exit out of at any given time. You can also do the running attack manually by holding down your block and then pressing triangle and circle, or Y and B, and your character just goes into this run. And then you can finish the run at any given time by pressing circle or pressing triangle, or as I was saying, respectively on Xbox, B or Y. And it does like the finishing twin thrust. You can also jump while you do this charging attack, which lets you do mounting damage by attacking afterwards. So this is another thing that you might want to consider, right? You do this attack, and then you jump and you press circle. It's kind of hard to do moving uphill, but yeah. If you do it on a hill, you also slide, but then jump, circle. Circle actually only does it in the ground, so if you want to deal mounting damage, you want to do either triangle or Y. But yeah, you can basically mount a monster by going into a run, and then jumping, and then triangle, and you will deal mounting damage. But anyway, going back to the whole perfect block thing that I kind of like got interrupted because I started talking about Power Guard and running and doing all that stuff. If you happen to land a perfect guard, you have a couple of choices of what you can do afterwards. Usually the one that I go for is circle or B, which will give you an animation like this, which is a pretty beastly counter, pretty nice. You deal a good chunk of damage. The other thing that you can do is you can press Y or triangle, and that gives you this stab, which is fairly simple. I still prefer circle or B. Or you can also go into a run. If you happen to do a perfect block, you can do like, triangle and circle or Y and B, and you'll start doing the running animation. When you are doing the running animation, you can also press X to jump sideways, or A if you're on a Xbox controller. You can press back and X to turn around. So if you happen to be running, we just ran out of stamina there. If you happen to be running, you press back and X and your character turns around. And you can also do triangle and circle while you are running to do a turnaround sweep. You have to press back and triangle and circle. I knew that you could do the sweep, but I kind of was whiffing it a little bit. But yeah, you do the running attack, and then you press back, triangle, and circle, and your character turns around, does a sweep. So this is particularly useful if you're running after a monster, and then you overshoot it. So you go through, and then you press back, triangle, and sweep, and you still slap the monster with a wide sweep, which is pretty cool. Now, another move that you have is the leaping thrust. This is actually a new move, from my understanding, which is just triangle and circle. Your character jumps up and stabs at the monster. A little bit of a, little bit of an extra oomph on your first poke. So, if you're trying to like reposition the monster's a little bit ahead of you, you can just go like, yeah! And then you go for the high pokes again. And that uses up your first poke, so you're only going to get 3 more pokes. So keep that in mind. It's usually like, with the lance, it goes in 4s. So poke, 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 poke. Did I get that right? No. Poke, 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 poke. It's 4 pokes, actually. But, yeah. Now, another very important move that you have is the guard dash. Now, guard dash is going to be blocking and triangle, or blocking and Y if you happen to be using an Xbox controller. Blocking, once again, is right trigger or R2. And if you press triangle, you'll notice you have to input a movement as well, so like forward. Your character just kind of like advances forward. And you can do this after any attack that you do, to kind of like reposition yourself. So say you do this, forward, forward, blocking and triangle, and your character advances forward. You can also do it backwards. Back and triangle, your character advances backwards, and you can advance towards the side. And now, the advantage of this move is that whenever you reposition like this, you're blocking. You can trigger perfect guards, and at the same time, you're kind of like protected, but repositioning yourself. I mean, if you've been playing Monster Hunter, or if it's your first time playing Monster Hunter, one of the things that you'll very quickly learn is that position is one of your most important things, and that is why this is so important. But the follow-up to the guard dash can be two things. You can either do a shield bash by pressing triangle or Y. So let's say we want to advance on that barrel. So we're moving forward. We're going to press block and triangle, or block and Y, and then we're going to press Y again. So like this. You do a shield bash. Shield bashes do blunt damage, which means that you can actually stun the monster that you are fighting against if you constantly give him this. You know, you give him the business with the shield end. You can also do that from the side. So for instance, you do a poke, then you go off to the side, press triangle or Y, and you're going to do a shield bash as well for KOs, which is particularly useful if you're trying to, you know, KO him with a hit on the head, even though the Lance actually has a better option for KOing monsters now, at least in my opinion. An attack that's a little bit easier to do, but we'll talk about that in just a second. The other thing that you can do with the guarding thrust is that you can also exit out of it with circle or B, and that is going to give you like a double poke. Gives you basically the leaping thrust, which is triangle and circle. So that's pretty nice. And this is actually one of the ways that most Lance players would reposition. So let's say, oh, the monster moved to my right. I can just like poke into guard thrust, into circle, and you can kind of like follow the monster where it's going. Because the Lance is not going to deal redonkulous amounts of damage in one hit. However, I mean, maybe I'll be proven wrong, so I don't want to say it's never going to happen, but I'm saying usually with the Lance, your strength is going to be your uptime. So you want to make sure to constantly be repositioning and, you know, following up on whatever the monster is doing with these guarded thrusts and the runs and all of these things and all the mobility stuff that the Lance has. Very much like the gun Lance, the Lance also has the long back hop. So if you back hop and then you press back and X or back and A, your character does a longer, and you can do it reverse as well. Your character does a little bit of a longer back hop. But usually with the Lance, if you're repositioning forward, you can just like do a running thing, right? If the monster is too far or if the monster is close enough, you do the guard dash, which like I told you is blocking plus Y or triangle. And then you can go for the finishing with the thrust. That is usually what we do to catch up with monsters. At least that's what I do whenever I play Lance to catch up with monsters and reposition myself and doing all of that good stuff. But that kind of covers the overall basics of the Lance. Another thing that we have is we have the focus strike. So you can use your focus mode and then you press on R1 or right bumper. Focus mode, once again, is left trigger or L2. And then you press your R1 or right bumper and your character does this. And now, if you actually hit a wound with this attack, there's going to be a follow-up where your character kind of like runs through the monster and you want to try and hit as many wounds as your character is running into the monster. That's going to detonate more wounds, which is pretty good. But, as you guys can tell, this is another shield hit. That means that this is one of the easiest ways of doing KO damage on a monster. You go up to the monster, go up to his face, and then you press, you know, the buttons for your focus strike, which is, like I said, left trigger and R1 or right bumper. Your character just shield bashes him, and you can kind of like repeat that. Bash, 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 and eventually you can get a KO. Even though, you know, when you're doing Lance, you're not going to be shooting for all the KOs, but you can at least get like an early KO, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But yeah, that is the Lance. Now, let me show you how we completely destroy a Chatacabra with this bad boy, because it is so brutally satisfying. Okay, so before we begin the hunt, I do realize I forgot to mention... Okay, so before we begin the hunt, wait, did I? Okay, so before we begin the hunt, I do realize there is one move that I neglected to mention, because this is a move that kind of traumatized me during Rise and Sunbreak, because I did not like the role that they assigned to this move, but that's neither here nor there. But it's basically during any of your combos, you can press triangle and circle to do this wide sweep thing, which deals a good amount of damage, but it's not very precise, and in my opinion kind of breaks up the flow of the combos a little bit. But it is something that you can do after your leaping thrust as well. They do a little bit of a different combo, deals a decent chunk of damage, then you can keep pressing it and go into the triple thrust or whatever else you want to do. But anyways, getting back onto Sacred Mounting. Whenever you are on your Sacred, you can hold down on triangle and you actually go into like a cavalry charge, which is pretty cool. As you guys can see here, this will keep dealing damage so long as you hit a target, and then if you release it, it's going to do a sweep, which is what kind of reminded me that I'd forgotten to talk about the sweep. You can also do the usual dismount attack by triangle or and circle or Y and B, and your character will jump and do this attack, which will hit the monster, deal mounting damage, do all the usual fun stuff. But as per usual, what we're going to be doing, as you guys already know, is we're going to be stabbing this Chatacabra in the butt, like we always do. Blammo! Now we're going to go ahead and start dismantling him. We're going to do the high pokes with the triple poke. I thought he was going to do something, so I went for a block. Use focus mode to kind of reposition. We have a wound open, which is actually near the face. I actually have focus mode set to toggle. It's pretty good, but you don't have to play like this. This is just a personal option for the lance, but I do like it. As you can see, we're going to do our focus strike there to get the wound. One of the things that I've noticed is that the lance seems to do way more wounds than what I would expect. I'm going to go for a counter thrust here. I was like trying to predict if he was going to do something to me. Let's see, can we counter? No, he's not going to do anything. Okay. I'm going to go for the block there, just a standard old block. We have a couple of wounds, so we're going to go for the focus strike, which is L2 plus R1, or left trigger plus right bumper. I'm going to keep bashing him in the face. I'm trying to get that face wound he's got going. We did a perfect guard, so we're going to do a counter thrust. That's another perfect guard. Gonna get a bunch of wounds right there. Capitalize, and he's down. And now we're gonna go ahead and hit the poke. We're gonna take him to the poke station. I was trying to do another perfect guard there. We're gonna go for another focus strike on the head. Another perfect guard with a counter. And another perfect guard, which leads us into a power clash. Power clash is just mashing triangle or Y. There you go. Another wound break. It just is such a solid weapon. It just feels fantastic to play, and I think it's one of the more underrated weapons. Another thing that happens whenever you get a perfect block against the monster is it also does a little shield bash. Let's see if we can actually get a KO by doing the focus strike. We're just going to spam the focus strike on the head, and then we're going to reposition with dodges whenever we need to. Bam. We can also do the old guard dash to reposition. And that also allows you to go into the shield bash by pressing on Y at the end of it again. What is this noise I keep hearing? Oh, it's the stupid insects that are making all this racket. Again, this is not super optimal. I'm just showing you that you guys can kind of like contribute to KO. But you do have to hit the head, which I'm missing a little bit here. There you go. Is that a KO? Oh no, that was actually a focus strike. There's the KO, see? So long as you keep hitting, you're going to eventually get a KO. You can also do the sweep here if you want to. It actually deals a decent chunk of damage. And you can kind of like reposition. We don't really do that much power guard on him, but I can just show you what a power guard looks like. I wish I would land one of the... we have a wound here. Wish I'd land one of the final counter thrusts, the fourth high poke. That'd be really cool, but I still struggle a little bit with those, and poor old Chatacabra just getting abused. I guess another thing that I could show you is the running into mount. And another thing that I've noticed about the lance this time around is that it actually uses up sharpness like nobody's business. If you look at our sharpness, it is so bad. Like, one of the things that was super surprising to me when I was playing lance, I was like, wait, I have to sharpen this weapon more often than the gun lance now? That's so weird. Gun lance used to suffer from the big sharpness issues, and now it's doing fine. And our poor brothers of the lance are like suffering big time. Feels bad, dude. Is he gonna go to sleep? Nope, he's not. Okay. We're gonna get a perfect guard into a poke. We're going to do a charged poke, even though we're not going to land a counter with that. There, right there, we got a counter. Not sure if you guys noticed, we did a little bit of extra damage. Oh, we would have gotten that too, but he actually overshot us. Again, I'm trying to greed for that counter thrust to show it to you guys, but usually, you know, you just want to be more optimal. You go straight for the triple poke at the end there, unless you see an attack coming. Bonk. I was doing the power guard here. Aw, you're tired? You can fix that. It just feels so good. Like, look at that. We didn't even get to break all the wounds. I highly recommend you guys checking out the Lance. Lance is hella fun. I know that it sounds simple and it's not as flashy as the other weapons, but I'll tell you right now, it is super fun to play. Absolutely love it. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.